Hello, Simone. I am excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to do a deep dive both on the formation of the 4B movement, its move to the United States, but also being base camp. I wanted to take a unique perspective on this movement. And I think it reveals something that a lot of people are not picking up.
You have to have 4Bs: broads, blood, and bullets. That's what it takes.
So for those who are not clear, what the 4B movement is a movement away from having sex with men, marrying men, or having kids.
And don't even get me started about this whole rights thing. What have we come to if you can't demand sexual favors from the people in your employ?
We'll go into specifics in a bit, but that's the gist of it. Women who feel, from a feminist and far left perspective, done with men are moving towards a lifestyle of increased chastity. Now, as you can imagine, and as we will go over in this, many conservatives are like, yeah, this is what we always wanted you to do. But I think that they are missing something fundamental that's happening here, which is that the 4B movement, as well as other movements within the progressive cause now, are almost a laundered conservative movement that is intentionally and not accidentally traditionalist. So it really hit home this weekend when we were meeting with a bunch of people from the Heritage Foundation and a bunch of Washington conservatives, and a lot of them liked pushing ideas like banning pornography, which is very popular among groups like the 4B movement. The 4B movement is actually in Korea known as a very turfy movement. It's a very anti-trans movement, which we'll get to, which I think would surprise a lot of people. They're like, wait, it's an anti-trans movement? It's like, yeah, it's an anti-trans movement. So they're anti-trans, they're pro chastity. They believe that a man is born a man and a woman is born a woman, and there's only two genders. They are against pornography, and they have a very traditional role of a woman's value to society. So fundamentally, what is the 4B movement but a movement that says my core value? Like if I wanted to put pressure on society, the core way I would do that is by limiting sexual access to myself. And it also frames sexuality as something that men want from women, and that it is women to distribute. It's not like women want sex and men want sex. It is a very, very traditionalist view of sexuality, which is sexuality and sex is something women fundamentally don't want or don't want that much, and they can manipulate their husbands or society by trickling it out. And I think that what we're seeing here is, as the Democratic Party, and you can see this in the statistics, is especially in places like Korea, right? Where, well, it's not the Democratic Party, I think it's separate in Korea, but you see women going far one way in voting patterns and men going far another way in voting patterns. As the parties increasingly become a male party and a female party, it only makes sense that a traditionalist, conservative, female agenda faction would form within the Progressive Party. And I think that's what we're beginning to see the rumblings of with the 4B movement.
I may not agree, but I will share my opinions as you share yours.
No, I want to hear your counters this.
I watched a bunch of 4B content, especially American commentary after Trump was elected, when there was a surge in 4B interest in the United States. And when it comes down to it, in the end, I think this is ultimately just another iteration of women tearing other women down to create a more competitive market for themselves. To say, yeah, shave your hair, don't wear makeup, swear off men.
Wait, do you actually believe, like, I could see this hypothetically being a thing, but when I try to model the women who are doing things like shaving their heads, or not, or the women who are cheering them on, I don't think that they actively see these women as sexual competition.
It's not conscious, but it's something that happens anyway. If you have a bunch of women sitting around and they're all like, oh, my thighs are so fat, I'm so ugly, everyone just kind of talks themselves down, and then everyone's like, no, you're beautiful like you are, you should not wear any makeup, and you're being nice, but also it wouldn't be terrible if they didn't take that much care of
Have
themselves.
you ever caught yourself intentionally engaging in that behavior?
I just am on autopilot. I'm on auto respond. I'm always just going to say whatever creates the most social harmony and niceness. But I just get that impression low key. And there's a lot going on with the commentary in this movement, but in the end, when you look at research on female interaction and what not words say, but what actions demonstrate, women subtly pull each other down all the time. Like that study with haircuts and more attractive
This
women
is
getting
true.
more hair cut off. And this just feels like
Sorry.
a
This,
market correction
you
among
explain
women.
the study you just referenced.
Researchers had evaluated, I might butcher this, but the gist of the study was that women who are more attractive in this study were given shorter haircuts than they requested by their hairstylists. And the supposition is that they were overcorrecting for these women being too pretty and trying to essentially tear them down. And there's also some research suggesting a little bit of discrimination against women in hiring. Cremu actually did an interesting analysis of this, a short one on his Substack, suggesting that a lot of the research on attractiveness and how people are affected is actually kludgy, because the way that people are rating attractiveness is really subjective and not perfect in many ways, in many studies. Some studies are better than others. But anyway, there is, I think, a lot of intrasexual competition among women that is very subconscious, and that the 4Bs movement is definitely in part motivated by feminist interests, but for a variety of reasons. I'm getting a lot more pick me signaling than I am getting.
But who are they signaling the pick meanness to? I mean, look, they're signaling it, and I think this is interesting.
They're
Is that
signaling that they're extra hard to get, that they're extra desirable, so that when they do hone in on a target, that target understands just how high value this woman is. She's sworn off all men, which of course almost like makes you a virgin again, right? She's virginal again. She's unobtainable, but she might consider you. And so it gives you an extra bargaining chip on the
Virginity. Remember, a virgin body has the morning sheen of an unopened flower and the freshness of secret springs. It's your choice, ladies. Hold on to your glorious ripe fruit, or comprende?
Maybe I shouldn't, Coach Wolf.
Jerry, if you're worried about your past, don't. This is a great opportunity to start fresh.
Even though this morning I thumbed a ride and made a little lunch money.
Jerry, I'm giving you a chance to reclaim your virginity.
What? Don't think about sex, don't think about sex, don't think about
Hey, Jerry.
sex. Hello!
I was wondering...
Wondering what? If you could get me behind the dumpster, hike up my skirt, and pound home, well, I'm a virgin now. And this is one blushing rose you are not gonna deflower.
I've actually seen this in a lot of 4B content, and which is that they will be like, I am, swearing off men entirely, unless I find a really good man who is valued aligned with me.
who's really good enough, who's qualified enough, then he might be. Because the other issue is that, now I would say a huge proportion of this, again, is women who are already voluntarily celibate, who have for 17 years not dated men, and they're very happy that way, but they're not the ones shouting about 4B stuff from the hilltop.
I actually disagree pretty strongly here. I have noticed, and I see this in the comment section of videos about the majority, at least within the West and the US, people who identify as 4B, many of them were femcells before this. They were women who were, now it's not that they're unable to find somebody to sleep with them, it's that nobody who they would qualify as good enough for them is interested in sleeping with them. And now they can re-identify as being a reactionary, doing what they were already doing. So,
yes, then there's definitely a lot of that is a very real faction of this movement. There's another faction that, even, for example, there's a YouTube channel, I think called Spoiled Girlies or something, that is basically red pill for women. It's about, how does she say, like, it's basically just about getting as much resources as you can as a woman and getting that man that you want, I think. And she's done multiple videos on the 4Bs movement and appropriated it and acted as though she's a part of it and she supports it. And this is about taking back your power. She also talks weirdly about how women hold the power to extinguish entire ethnicities. She literally says that. I kid you not. So I will send you a link to that.
I guess she means their own ethnicity, right? Like that's her.
She's just trying to highlight, in her view, the power that women have. So she's talking about how we can end lineages by opting out, how we can literally end ethnicities by opting out. So she's
what
really,
ethnicity is this woman?
she's Asian, which is it's an extra bad look. Well, because that's I mean, yeah, 4B is helping to end the ethnicity of South Koreans.
It's so interesting. Just as a tangent here, but I found this really interesting. Is that in the pronatalist movement, all of the Asian, like I know Asians who are active in the pronatalist movement,
Mhm.
none of them have kids or are really trying to have kids. But
Mm.
hilariously, many of the most famous pronatalists are married to Asian people, and you wouldn't know it, and have tons of kids. But the non-Asian partner is the one who's famous. Specifically here, both.
No, you don't name
Okay,
people.
I won't name people, but multiple of the most famous pronatalists who you definitely know of, I'd actually say maybe like 50% of your pronatalist mental space are people who are having Asian kids and you don't recognize it, which
Because a
is
lot of people are anonymous online, but that's okay. I just want to point out though that this YouTuber exemplifies a genre or a subfaction of 4B that is basically pick-me's or women who see men as resources to leverage and are using this movement as a part of that. Also, in the way that they talk about it, in the way that you see a lot of 4B content online, especially at least from American women, it's super not feminist. Because it does not pass a Bechdel test, right? Like a Bechdel test in a movie, I think you have to have two female characters talk for longer than 5 minutes about something other than guys.
okay.
And 4Bs, it's all about the relation to men, and it's men in this and men in that, and it's just all about how women relate to men. And what I like about MGTOW is at least a lot of the content, it also fails like the male version of a Bechdel test, but the best MGTOW content is just about building your own life.
Actually, this is really interesting that you mentioned this, is that the MGTOW content doesn't masturbate, and I do think that it is masturbatory to an extent, about all of the women who aren't going to be getting sexual access to them. Whereas when women go into 4B stuff, it is a constant, almost performative, look at how desired I am and everyone I'm turning away. Um,
You're right. It's weird. MGTOW content that is about women is about how terrible women are. Whereas it seems the most 4B content I see is still about me, the woman, my power, my womb, and this theme of take back your power. What on earth? How is isolating yourself in society taking back your power? That is disempowering you.
Well,
If you
it's
just have
also going to
to
lead
talk
to
to
the
men
opposite
anymore.
of what they want, which is that men who previously they might have communicated their beliefs to
Yeah.
are now just not going to be exposed to a progressive perspective at all.
Yeah,
Like,
well, the other thing that's crazy too is this concept that they have of we hold the power of life. Well, you don't if you opt out of having kids, it's gone. The thing that made you unique from a gender standpoint is completely carved out. And that's another reason why I really don't think these women are taking this seriously. They plan on getting a guy.
that's not
They
true. They're getting
plan
their
on
like
having
the
kids.
ovaries removed and stuff. Like they're
No, yeah,
very
and definitely there's different subfactions of this where they're absolutely the women who are basically had always planned on going their own way, and now they have a movement they can put their name to. But here's another piece of evidence as to why I think this is more about women who plan on ending up with men anyway. Another name for this movement that American women are giving to it is like the Lysistrata movement. Are you
Yeah,
familiar with Lysistrata? Did you
we're
have to
going to
read
talk
that?
about it in detail when I get to the data part of this
Okay, then dive into it.
discussion. You want me to immediately dive into? Okay,
Well, no,
hold on.
well, I can talk about it, but I mean, like the context of it is Lysistrata is a Greek comedy in which women decide to deny sex to men to try to end the Peloponnesian War. But it's a comedy, it's a joke. And actually, Lysistrata herself at one point during the play, when making the pitch an argument to a man as to why the war needs to end, is that it is a travesty to young Greek women that the men are off fighting battles, depriving these women of the ability to become mothers. I just there was never a
Hold on. I'll
plan.
go through the full Lysistrata here. So
Okay.
this was a play that was performed. If you want to go to our One Civilization video to like contrast this with other cultures and how far behind they are, in 411 BC.
Mhm.
It was a comic about a woman's mission to end the Peloponnesian War between the Greek city-states
Yeah.
by denying men. And some examples of scenes in it that I found particularly interesting. The magistrate then arrives with some Sicilian archers, the Athenian version of police constables. He reflects on the nature of women, their devotion to wine, promiscuous sex, and exotic cults, such as Sabius and Adonis. But above all, he blames men for the poor supervision of their womenfolk. So basically, the police comes up to settle everything down, and he's like, "Yeah, but women, wow, they really
Oh,
love getting
women
drunk
and
and
their
promiscuous sex,
MLMs and their
and
gah.
their weird witchy things." Is basically what he's saying. Like, and this is being done 400 BC, by the way. Then in the part that you're talking about, where she explains that they should feel pity for the young childless women who are aging at home while the men are away on their endless campaigns, the
Mhm.
magistrate points out that men also age. In response, she reminds him that men can marry at any age, whereas a woman only has a short time before she is considered old. Which,
Mhm.
one, I love that, like, you have this feminist, anti-feminist argument captured in this, like, almost half a century or have a millennial before Christ play, which is wild here.
Yeah.
And then the debate is continued between the chorus of old men and the chorus of old women
Mhm.
until Lysistrata returns to the stage with news that her comrades are desperate for sex and they are beginning to desert on the silliest of pretexts. Specifically, one woman says that she has to go home to air her fabrics by spreading them on the bed. And in the end, Lysistrata does win and ends up ending the war. But
Someone
continue.
needs to make, if they haven't already, a cheesy porn movie, because the whole thing is already basically a really bad porn, like, content. Like, you could, like, what, didn't a Spartan show up to the gates with a giant boner or something?
Yes, he shows up with a burden, they say, but it's obviously a large boner.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's just like, "Oh, you've banned me from sex," and, like, there are all these, like, it's clearly, it's a very comedic, almost pornographic play. And but the whole thing also is such a joke. Women didn't have rights at that time. It was just like, ha ha ha, wouldn't it be funny if women, it, like,
The
nothing
joke is
about.
women's rights.
Yes, and that's what's so annoying about people, like, women being like, "Oh, well, this is the Lysistrata movement." Oh, like that joke play about women being idiots and like, "Oh, wouldn't it be funny if they did this?" They could never do that though because they don't have any rights. Plus, it wasn't even about women not wanting to have sex or have kids, because they did. And the whole reason they were trying to stop the war wasn't that they didn't like war, it was that they wanted to
It
have
was that
kids
they
and be
wanted to have
moms
more
at home.
kids.
Oh, like, clearly this is not a movement that's being taken seriously. It's not.
Okay, maybe, but I'm gonna go into the history of the movement because I want this to be the
Yes.
be all end all source on the movement if you're
Well,
looking
and
for information.
I think that an important part of this history, and I hope that you highlight it too, is the South Korean context. Because when it's moved over to an American context, that's when I feel like the real pantomime begins. That's when it becomes a complete joke.
Well, we'll talk about why it becomes a complete joke because it actually means something completely different when it's being done in an American context. But
Yes.
we've talked about the statistic before, but it's important to reevaluate here, which is that 79.1% of young women and 72.1% of young men want to leave Korea, and 83.1% of young women and 78.4% of young men consider Korea hell. That's 83% of women in South Korea consider their country and life hell. In fact, they've taken to calling their lives Hell Joseon, or that's what Korea is for them. This catchphrase has become popular among Koreans in recent years to describe their country, with a Joseon being the name of a long dead Korean kingdom. So they also have a new term, Taljo, a portmanteau comprising leave and Joseon, which vernacularly might be translated to escape hell. Now, in terms of this exploding was in the US, you had Google searches for the 4B movement increase 450% following the election.
Wow.
Yeah, representing over 200,000 people searching the term. Now, I had started here was talking about a little bit about the American version, and then we'll get to the Korean version, okay?
Okay.
Because I want to point out that this is a real thing that's happening here. So one person was telling Newsweek, Brooke Arrington, that I fear The Handmaid's Tale will become our reality. And she did a popular video on this, and you should see our Handmaid's Tale about this video, where I do feel that part of this is sexual role play for women,
Oh, yeah.
about how desired they are.
Oh,
That
yes.
them taking themselves off a sexual marketplace is going to affect political outcomes and make Trumpers like change their ways and everything like that.
Well, and it's also a great way to feel desired without facing that rejection. Because I think a lot of women, if they actually put themselves on the market, they would discover how few people actually want them. Not just because they themselves are undesirable. And you'll see this, like a lot of the women who are here who are like, I'm going to take away my beauty, like by shaving my head. And it's like, dude, you do not look that great to start with. Not to be mean, but like, I'm just saying in a dating, like the online
very
world.
much a, the famous meme of like, no man whose lips have touched alcohol will touch these lips. And it's a bunch of like venomous hagadans.
Well, but anyway, so like already, but this enables them to think, well, if I had tried, if I wasn't removing myself from the market, I would be so desired.
And you see things like a quote from this woman is, I plan to do as much decentering of men as possible beyond the groundwork I have already started. This means not appealing to the male gaze and not allowing for myself to be part of a system that directly benefits men. So basically, she's just going to stop trying and not feel bad about stopping trying.
Well, but again, my point is, this is one of the most effective ways to feel as though you are desired or you would have been desired by removing the potentiality of rejection. They can't judge you because you intentionally ruined yourself. Your crop doesn't grow because you intentionally salted the earth. It's not because I'm a bad farmer. It's because I salted the earth. Ha ha. So that's what they're doing.
And they don't need to face the emotional consequences for that, which I think, I think they realize now a lot of the women doing this are like 35 and are like, I'm not going to have kids now. And I'm like, bitch, you were not going to have kids. You are way too old to find a husband at this point. And it is a way for them to feel like they didn't lose the game.
Yes. And that's meaningful. Again, so they're not in the movement for the movement. They're in the movement to feel good about themselves for some reason. Not that we don't do that for everything, but.
And as I pointed out, was a conservative reaction. So this Newsweek article goes over things like Bernadine Bluntly from Texas, who is a popular Instagram influencer, says, telling women to guard their hearts, bodies, and wombs for years. Whatever causes women to come to the same conclusion is welcome to me. A lot of my Christian conservative followers on social media are beyond thrilled to welcome the American 4B movement, because this is what we've been trying to explain to them for so long. Rejecting the sexual revolution mindset of casual sex for your own good. When God sets the rules and boundaries, it wasn't to withhold freedom and fun from us. It was to secure protection and stability and joy. This is the mother of 6, who's 34 years old. She goes on to say, being intentional in your dating and relationships is a game changer. Saving sex for marriage, which you kind of did weirdly, will absolutely level up your life. Being highly selective about which man you'll have and raise children with is crucial. And I think that this is really interesting. Mary Harrington went on a long thing about how good this is. Actually, Christine Clark, the founder of Girl Defined, which is a biblical woman thing, she said in response to this, who is the one getting punished here? Okay, but anyway, yeah, she just says who's the one getting punished here, basically pointing out that women have sexual desires as well, and you're going to destroy your relationships over this. What are you doing? But I wanted to talk about where this started in Korea, because I think that people don't understand how insane this movement was at its beginning. And you are going to be shocked by this.
Hold on, before you start this, I just want to make sure that some of the groundwork is laid, that the 4B movement came after a period that lasted really long that was pretty negative toward women in South Korea. Like, astoundingly, that there was still selective abortion against female babies in the 90s. That's when you and I were kids, okay? That is, I mean, I'm just saying this, the background for this is not insane. That women have been unliked by Korean culture, and I could see people looking to that and being a little mad about it. So I just want to say this isn't coming
Simone,
from
you're gonna feel bad about those words in just a second.
All right.
So it started out of something called WOMAD. This was around the period from 2017 to 2019. WOMAD was a website for Korean women, sort of similar to Crystal Cafe in the United States in terms of the ideology of the website, that formed after the other Korean feminist website or female focused website, Meganalia, issued a ban on the use of explicit slurs against gay men and transgendered people. So this was all of the extremist women in Korea who didn't want to be on a platform that wouldn't let them use anti-gay and transphobic slurs. Just to give you an idea of how transphobic the movement was to start. WOMAD users responded to discrimination in South Korea by mirroring. So they attempted to discriminate against men actively and aggressively. And so you might be like, oh, how bad is that? Well, for example, it's Reddit where you can upvote or downvote things. The upvote symbol is a swastika, by the way.
Oh, okay. This is very 4chan-y. They're going for it. They're going for it.
The favicon for the website is a vulva with a red dot at the center representing both period blood and fire.
Oh, I don't know.
Now, there have been multiple posts on the site in 2016, for example, around when this was starting, that claimed that they had killed men with titles such as, I fed men coffee mixed with antifreeze liquid, end quote, and quote, I killed a man by pushing him into a reservoir, end quote. And you might think that
the way
these
you
are just,
pronounce reservoir.
you might think that these are just shit posts.
Yeah.
Here's the problem.
Do they correspond with? They do not correspond with news or like.
No, hold on. In November 19th, 2017, a member wrote a post on the WOMAD forum claiming that she had drugged and raped an Australian boy. She uploaded photos and videos allegedly portraying the grape. And WOMAD members showed their support for the writer, leaving comments saying that they would pay to watch the videos of the sexual assault. Now, a number of Korean media outlets have identified the woman as an au pair for an Australian
Wait, so this was a young, it wasn't, we're not talking like a boy because they're male, like we're talking about underage?
Yeah. The suspect reportedly committed the assault 2 days into her job as an au pair. And in the post, which was made in the Korean language, the netizen says that she had been biding her time to, quote, have a taste of a Western boy since living in Australia, end quote. And, quote, now what's interesting is that while some things have said au pair, this doesn't look like she was an au pair. She said, quote, where I work has various facilities linked together, and this includes residences with an outdoor pool. A cute boy kept catching my eye at the pool, and I set my mark on him, end quote. The suspect was arrested Monday after she posted a detailed account on a Korean extremist misandry website of her The post claimed that she drugged and raped her victim, which she did by crushing up sleeping pills, and included screenshots. The WOMAD members defended her, claiming that Arum Lee was innocent, and conducted an online fundraiser for her lawyer appointment. In addition, they sent a petition to the Australian police to release Armin Lee and protested the victim's parents. Now, they specifically what they claimed is that, quote, Lolita is a crime, Shotokan is a member of sexual preference. So if you don't know, Lolita is when you find underage women attractive, Shotokan is when you find underage men attractive.
Wow.
So she did this, it was proven, and the forum supported her and fundraised for her and asked her to send a video.
Is this the female 4chan equivalent of, or this is the 4chan equivalent
I don't think
of female
has
comedians
ever
aren't
done
funny,
something
right?
this bad.
So like female comedians aren't funny.
Say something funny, Wendy. We can't wait.
I'm not funny.
Hey, girls are funny, Wendy, okay? Get over it. Just do women's comedy stuff, talk about how fat you are and how you want to have sex with guys and then say, my vagina a lot.
I don't feel like being funny right now.
And that's just the kind of sexist bullcrap that's going to keep you in the kitchen. Sit your ass down. This isn't a joke, you guys. Girls are funny.
And female 4chaners, when they troll, it's just really really disturbing.
4chan's always been pretty accepting of women.
Yeah, well, when 4chan trolls, it's like, oh, let's find the flag that Shia LaBeouf has tried to hide. And then when
and a lot of
when
women
female
got their
4chan does
start
it, they
on
just
4chan, like Creepy Chan and stuff like that. There's been a lot of women who've been treated with respect on 4chan if they buy into
well,
the
and I'm
culture.
not saying that 4chan is misogynist. I'm just saying that 4chan code's really male, and so even women on it are acting like
True,
pros.
but 4chan has never done anything like this.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's just like female comedians aren't funny. Female 4chaners, like the female version of it, it just does really creepy bad stuff instead of fun cool stuff.
It's just like evil shit. Yeah.
Just women seem to be ruining. There are just some things, some areas where women just shouldn't play. And there's some places where
I note here that the 4B movement came out of the Escape the Corset movement.
Which is reasonable considering the beauty standards in South Korea, the amount of money that the average South Korean woman spends on cosmetics and beauty treatments annually is off the chain. I think that there is a completely logical market correction. I also think that it has nothing to do with men. And to frame the anti-corset movement or whatever they call it, that 2016 origins backlash against dolling yourself up in South Korea, has more to do with lashing back against consumerism and also women's standards. Women wear makeup for women. They do not wear makeup for men. They pretend that they do, but no. They wear it for female audiences.
Yeah, well, and I think here what's really interesting is that the 4B movement in the United States is fighting for something fundamentally different than what the 4B movement in Korea is. So the no sex part of the Korean 4B movement is mostly because in Korea, sex is the first stage of the funnel that leads to marriage, not to deny men casual sex. So if you look at rates of casual sex, around 66% of American women have casual sex, only 13.1% of Korean women have casual sex. It is very rare. As the one article stated, 4B's concern is primarily was rejecting the institution of marriage, says Jung, with the other B's following naturally. Quote, an inevitable result of the rejection of marriage, end quote, says Jung. Quote, why? In a conservative society in South Korea, dating is largely considered, especially by men, the prelude to marriage, and marriage the prelude to childbirth. So for many who wish to remain single and childless, you end up not dating either, end quote. American women, in contrast, are more so calling for the rejection of casual sexual relationships. But I find that really interesting, and it fundamentally shows a sort of misunderstanding of the movement and what it's about by the American audience.
Well, yeah, for me, the movement, the 4B, and I think it's unfair to take an extremist, misandrist online forum and say that that's representative of the 4B movement.
It was the majority of the movement, Simone. The 4B movement is mostly something that was created in the Western imagination out of the types of people who went on this forum. It never had more than, I think, like 4,000 members or something. It was not that big in South Korea. I'd also note here that it's largely been replaced in South Korea by something called the 6B4T movement, where they added a few additional things, specifically not buying products viewed as sexist and supporting others within the movement, whereas the T is about rejecting things like beauty standards, hypersexualization, religion, and idol culture. So, you know, generally, these are the people we want removing themselves from the genetic pool. Like, we are obviously benefiting from this. You can see our video on cucking and like that these people are cucking themselves. But Simone, I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Like I said, I still think that there are very South Korea specific reasons why some women would be having a backlash and why it's very complicated, but then it's being appropriated in the US by a bunch of people seeking attention and trying to justify their existing indulgent actions and make them look ideologically driven. Similarly to people who argue that they aren't having children for the environment. Now they're saying, well, I'm not having children because of 4Bs. That's an excuse and it's signaling, and it's not actually something that people take seriously, as is indicated by the way that it's presented.
Well, I actually think that you capture something really powerful here, which is to say that these individuals, largely speaking, had already removed themselves from the gene pool. They had already removed themselves from the gene pool when they decided to live a life of casual sex into their mid-30s. Like, you're definitely not going to end up married if you're doing that. Like, I'm not personally like necessarily against casual sex when individuals are like, let's say, below the age of 25 and they're trying to, it's very hard to get partners without it in today's dating economy. I'm not saying it's the best thing. I'm just saying that it is hard to get partners without it. So I understand the challenge that young people are going through. But if you are having casual sex post the age of 25, there's basically no shot you're going to get married realistically. No shot you're going to be part of the next generation. No thought you're going to be, And I think that these are people who had already opted out of everything. Now they're just like adding a different flavor to what they were already doing. And I note here back to my original thesis, because I do believe it. I think that there is a faction of the Democratic Party that is becoming a traditionalist conservative faction that is anti-sex, that is anti-porn, that is anti-trans people, that is two genders, but that is also solidly Democrat because they want these state resources because they don't expect to look for a husband either. And they don't want to, support themselves. So they're like, okay, who's going to support me? And I think that this faction represents a new political entity that people are like, ha ha ha, they're accidentally conservative, where I think, no, ha ha ha, they're intentionally conservative, but still Democrat. You just don't understand how much the parties have flipped. Thoughts on that thesis?
Yeah. Well, and as I think we'll discuss in some future podcasts, the nature of conservatism has changed. And there are now new factions that people don't really understand yet. But I'm kind of disappointed also in this movement and the lack of modeling the other side that is being demonstrated once again by some kind of reactionary movement. And that women are taking back their power and thinking that this is so punishing toward men when they're really just hurting themselves. Andrew Tate tweeted something along the lines of, now you don't even need abortions. Like this doesn't hurt anyone except for them. And it's disappointing that we have reached a point at which many people they don't have the tool set to model what other people would be thinking or how they would react to them. They can only think of things in terms of themselves. And we've seen this with our toddlers. There is this point at which they begin to realize that there are other people who have their own perspectives and wants and needs. And it's so exciting when they get out of that phase of everything being only in relation to themselves and their wants. And they can't possibly understand that people might see things differently or view them from a third-party perspective. Yeah. It's scary that I'm seeing TikTok videos of people presumably in their 20s and 30s who don't seem to have gone beyond that toddler phase, or if they ever did get there, they've reverted back to this proto phase of everything in terms of themselves. And
well, you see this on the male side in Korea as well. Are you familiar with the finger pinching conspiracy theory?
Oh, yes, where they think that every time someone poses like there's a photo of them, they're trying to make some dig at men.
Yeah,
right?
So in Korea, it's like considered incredibly offensive to like make this sign.
Because it implies and if it's accidentally have a small penis, right?
Yeah, if it's accidentally made in an ad or something like that, men will actually go protest. Like men, like large groups of men will actually protest in front of like companies because somebody in a video game accidentally had this depiction being made. They see it as an extremely offensive symbol. Like in the US, like if you accidentally put a swastika in something, it is really interesting. Actually, probably bigger than in the US if you accidentally put a swastika in something.
Yeah. That's weird. But also, yeah, I think that is another indication of what's going on in South Korea. They've got this whole different set of baggage that is now reverberating off itself.
Well, what started the 4B movement in South Korea was the murder of a woman, a young woman, by somebody who felt that they were angry at society because women didn't want to date them. And then when they were trialed and they were put in jail for 30 years, because it's not an automatic life sentence for murder in Korea, they were not given a jail sentence for a hate crime. And that really pissed off a lot of women in like these forums. As to why it was not considered a hate crime, I find this pretty interesting. and actually compelling from my perspective, because at first I was like, yeah, that seems like a hate crime. Well, it turns out the guy had pretty severe schizophrenia, and they were like, it's obviously a mental health issue. Like, and I'm like, okay, I used to work with people with schizophrenia. That was my job, studying schizophrenia. And I wouldn't really hold one of them accountable for something they said that was offensive by mainstream societal standards.
because
I remember
there's a
one of
lot
our
of
patients killed a random person because he thought they were a witch. Like,
Oh, well, yeah, not very political. I mean, unless I don't know.
it's not a hate crime in the way that they mean hate crime. It's like
Yeah,
a
there's
weird,
hate, but it's crazy hate. So
it's crazy hate. It's not like a logical hate. Anyway, love you to death, Simone. Are you gonna go 4B on me? Or are you gonna
I
need a vote?
if I make some kind of rebellion someday, it's gonna have to be a lot smarter than that. And I'm not the brightest bulb in the bucket, but I'm not gonna. This was just such a self-own, and it hurts.
Have you started making Malcolm type mixed metaphors?
I'm
not
trying
the
to,
brightest
because
bulb in the bucket.
I really love your mixed metaphors, and I'm just trying to like make it a family thing. This is a Commons way of speaking. We have to have our weird cult speak, right? So
Right.
part of it.
What's even the point of being in a cult if you don't have your weird way of talking?
Yeah, then how do they know that you're in a cult aside from the clothing and everything else that's weird about us?
I really had to find out more about this Romanian thing that you told me. So apparently our podcast is the 7th most popular podcast in Romania by some statistics, at least English language podcast. And I want to figure out what's going on there. Like, why?
So if you're in Romania, please tell us why you're watching, but we're really glad that you're here.
Yeah, I've noticed we do have an unusually large user base in Southeastern Europe, which is interesting. Part of me wonders if maybe like Russian bots have accidentally been promoting us.
Oops. I don't know. Have we said that many pro-Russia things?
No, we're pretty anti-Russia. So to the extent where I feel a little bad about it, like the only group we're probably more anti than anti-Russia on this podcast is Catholic. And like, those are like the two things we're probably known for, is like having a bias. No, we don't actually have a real bias against these groups. Like, I like Russians and everything like that, but they're the two groups that I like joke about the most, because in terms of like opposing sports teams, they're like the two clearest opposing sports teams to our particular Protestant American faction right now.
Well, your kids are part Russian, so you better be okay with that.
Yeah, Simone's part Russian, so.
But anyway, what am I making you for dinner?
What are you making me for dinner? I really don't know what you're planning for tonight.
I could do what leftovers? I mean, I'm just gonna do.
Hold on, I know what I want for dinner tonight.
Yeah. Oh, I could cut up the sausage into fried rice.
No.
Little tiny triangles of it.
No.
No. Okay.
I want tomato soup and grilled cheese.
That is an easy standby. So
spectacular grilled cheese. We got to start going through the tomato soup. So let's do this.
All right, it's on. I'll get started. And will you pick up the kids?
Yeah, I will.
All right. I love you, Malcolm.
I love you too, Simone. You're a great wife.
See you soon. And you are the perfect husband, and I love you, and you're really pretty. And I'm glad that I cut your hair.
You can't end on the nice thing. I
love your voice, and I love your wiggles, and I love the strange sound that you make when you're falling asleep. That sounds like a surfacing whale. You go. I just don't know why you do it, but it's so cute. I just love you. I just love you. It's so annoying. My favorite thing is the sound you make when you chew. It's so cute. Oh my god.
Why are you like this?
I don't know.
You gotta get. No, honestly, I'm not okay with this. My wife is gay. I need to handle this.
I'm super gay for you. Yeah. What you gonna do? Anyway, though, I love you. I'll see you downstairs.
See ya. I got the Krampus costume. I had to buy a different hat than the one I wanted, a different face than the one I wanted, because the one I wanted wasn't going to arrive till after Christmas. But the one I ended up getting is even more goat-like and elaborate, so...
As long as it's goat-like, that's kind of the rule.
Oh, it's very goat-like.
Is Krampus outside of the dark?
Krampus outside in the dark? I think so.
And Krampus have shoes, claws, even have a mask on it.
Yeah, huge claws and a scary face.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very proud of you for going and looking at Krampus. Do you think he was like a mystery? Were you trying to solve him like a mystery monster?
Yeah. Hi. I think it's Krampus, Mommy.
You think it's Krampus?
Yes,
You're hiding under your banquets? Oh my gosh. Guys, well, Dad's asleep. He always goes to sleep early.
I think Dad just dressed up in a monster costume.
That's a really interesting mystery solving proposition, but I think it was Krampus.
What are you guys up to?
We're gonna take a ride on it.
You're gonna take a ride on it? Where are you gonna go?
We're gonna go to Adventure City. Let's go.
Adventure City?